Hey everyone, this is George Couros. We're doing an epic book review with Andrea Gribble.
It's
Do you know
great
this?
to be here, George.
I did got the little epic book, and this is actually I did it. I actually did this with Joe Sanfilippo, and I know we have good mutual friends. But Andrea, I've known forever. She sends me an email pretending I don't know her, and she actually has a brand new book out. It's called Social Media for Schools, and it's something I'm very passionate about. And I know you are an expert at, known all over at least North America for your work, and we have many mutual friends. So, Andrea, if you could just kind of introduce yourself, give us I know there's a byline to the book. Tell us, just give us a little bit about the book. Tell us what it is. Tell us the entire title. I think that's a really great place to start.
Yes. Well, thanks for having me. Yes, very excited to get this book out into the world. It's called Social Media for Schools: Proven Storytelling Strategies and Ideas to Celebrate Your Students and Staff while Keeping Your Sanity. Because, George, social
Right.
media can drive you a little bit crazy. So that is,
What?
yeah,
That's new.
yeah, that's the key. So I've been doing social media for 9 years now. I
Right.
knew absolutely nothing when I started. The first person I really talked to was our mutual friend Joe Sanfilippo,
Oh, cool.
and found out what he was doing there in Little Fall Creek, Wisconsin, which is just up the road, about 40 minutes from me. And now, after working with schools all over the country, all over North America, into Canada, I finally put a lot of my experience, my strategies, my advice into one really helpful guide
Mhm.
for schools to be able to use social media to truly celebrate all the great things happening.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important aspect, and it's something I talk about quite a bit. With the groups that I work with, is that we almost become numb to the great stuff that happens in our schools because we're so used to seeing things that are they're great outside of school, but they're normal to many educators, right? And I think that really kind of shifts the parameters. One of the things when I was working in schools and principal, worked in central office, there was this kind of indicator. People are like, oh, you're just kind of bragging about what your school does. And I said, well, a little bit I am, because I'm really proud of our school, proud of the things
Mhm.
that we're doing. But for me, a lot of the stuff that I was focusing on, just sharing my learning, just sharing what's going on, just sharing this and kind of creating this transparency. And so as you were writing, this book, doing your work, but specifically, I writing this book. And by the way, everyone, you can check out the book. It's in the link down below. So make sure you check out and get a copy. When we recorded this, it wasn't actually available, but it will be by the time you hear this. What was your hopes for, what this book would do to really help schools, in a time where, there's obviously some negative conversations about schools from the outside.
Well, so many people, George, get thrown into school communication without any communication background.
Right.
I'm one of them. Like, I was a chemistry business major back in
Yeah.
college and got my MBA, and now I run a social media company. But we've all, especially us, I'm now 45. I didn't grow up with social media,
Right.
so I had to learn it. And schools really inviting and using this as a tool, it's been something that you've kind of had to try by trial and error.
Mhm.
And we know good things are happening, but how do we get the stories? How do we monitor the comments? And how do we handle all of this? So I really wanted to put together a thorough guide. I do a lot of webinars. I have a podcast of my own. Like, I've got hundreds of blogs out there, but I didn't have one resource to be able to say, hey, person who just got
Right.
handed the keys to Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, like, here's some proper ways of how you should use it for a public school, private school, charter school. This is really meant for all K-12 schools. But I think now in their hand, they've got a 5-section book that really breaks down, just some of the systems and the branding and the storytelling and best practices and professional development that they can use to really engage their
Mhm.
community, engage parents, but also 70% of your community has nobody in school right now. And
Right.
so can we amplify those stories? And me as a parent of 6 kids who they don't tell me what's going on at school, George. And so because of social media, I can see what they're learning, what they're experiencing, and it can lead to some great engagement.
Yeah, and I think that was a big thing for me too. It wasn't just like because you saw the kind of I know it's kind of weird to say old school, but people would have websites and it was just a one way communication tool,
Right.
and then they moved to social media and they use it as a one way communication tool when it actually had the opportunity to have conversations and to kind of connect. And one of the things that I was really passionate about was not limiting it to a just like one person was in charge of the communication. And
Mhm.
even in Navere's mindset, I shared this that a Twitter handle is about communication, a hashtag is about community. And we would use those hashtags to like get to know people, to get them to share their stories, to get to share, connect. And one of the things that we kind of talked about, before the podcast is I've seen people do this all the time is like, my views do not represent the school. I'm like, yeah, they, they kind of do because you work with kids.
Yes.
So, and it's not that you can't have views separate from your employer or anything like that, but they are connected, right? If
Mhm.
you share those things. And I'm curious about what you think about this because we actually said like basically here is our policy for social media. We don't want you to have personal accounts, we want you professional accounts. We just want to have a you account. And anything that you can say to kids in a classroom, you can say online. So if you can't say to kids in classroom, probably not the best space to do it. And you actually talked about this before, use this frame analogy. And I'm curious if that kind of connects to that and what that frame analogy actually is.
Yeah, so I get inspired a little bit when I go to church, and so I
Mm,
grab this example on kind of the positive mindset, which is
right.
obviously what we hope to have. Social media can get very very negative. We want storytellers in our community. We want our staff to be storytellers, and we want them to amplify all of the great things. But in a given school, like at any point, there's like some sunshine and
Yep.
rainbow, and then there's some clouds and some really like rough waters. And I'm holding up a little picture frame now. When it comes to social media, our job at the school is to really highlight the sunshine and the rainbows, right?
Mhm.
Doesn't mean the other stuff isn't happening. It doesn't
Yep.
mean that we don't communicate through emails or direct communication or on our website of some of the things that we're challenged with.
Mhm.
But really, social media is meant to highlight some of those positive things. And I think it's really important when we talk about how you talked about, our educators. I mean, who they are is who they are.
Mhm.
And you can't say my views don't represent the school because I mean we're just held to a standard
Yes.
where it really represents who we are as people and who we are to people's kids.
Right.
So when you think about it from a personal standpoint as an educator using social media, I mean, just like you really wouldn't wanna highlight having a fight with your spouse or
Right.
being really, really I mean, sometimes you're irate at a company, right? Because they didn't
Yeah.
bring your food at the right time, and so sometimes you'll go to Twitter and maybe complain a little bit about that, but for the most part, you're really sharing some of the positive things
Right.
when your student does something great or you go on a vacation or and that's really how you have to look at it when you're talking about your school because it doesn't mean that we've chatted a little before this.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you're toxic positivity. It
Right.
doesn't mean that everything is roses and unicorns and rainbows,
Mhm.
but we people they have a great time, a very easy time focusing and talking about that negativity on their own channels. Why don't we spend time really focusing on look at there's a lot of positive things going on in this school with our kids, with our staff. Let's shine a light on those things so that we can really showcase, hey, this is a great school. This is a great place to be.
Well, so and I think we all have kind of hopefully we've all progressed and grown as we get older and more wise, and as using this. And when I first started using social media, I'd use it to share these really great stories about what was going on in school, and I developed a sizable network. And with that, there's some kind of, there's a little bit of power, right? And
Yeah.
in the sense that you have reach, you can have influence. And sometimes I would actually use this stuff and to, complain. And like say like American Airlines was late and or their flight's delayed. So I'd go like American Airlines sucks, you suck, blah blah blah. And like I'm late. And as you get older, it's like, yeah, you're late because the plane's broke and I don't want to fly it's probably not a good idea to fly on a broken plane, right? To
Right.
be on time on a broken plane is not the best thing, right? I'd rather be delayed and be safe.
Yes.
And so you'd get attention. And then I started really kind of thinking, first of all, 9 out of 10 times I'm having no issues. I say nothing. And the one time I say something is when something goes wrong. And if if I actually if that happened to me, I would be destroyed. And so would any teacher if, like 95% of the kids in the classroom were like super excited, but then you just heard from the 5% on social media. And that's, it's like I always think about like how would I want to be treated in this situation and kind of act that way. And so I did this. There is a you don't know the story, and Dave Burgess and I, Dave Burgess, right?
Yes.
So
Yep.
Dave Burgess and I are very good friends, but we didn't start off as good friends. And I know you'll love this story. So I'm in a session with him, and I can tell us because I've told this with Dave. Dave knows, and we laugh about it now. I actually went to his session not knowing who he was, and I was like, "This sucks. I don't like it." And so I started posting and bashing Dave on Twitter. Right? This is very new to what I was doing, and I was with Jimmy Cassis, who I know you're friends with, and I'm
Yep.
like, "I'm out of here. This sucks. Like, I don't agree with anything this guy's saying." And so, Jimmy and I went for dinner that night, and we got to the restaurant. He said, "Hey, we're gonna have a table for 6." I'm like, "Why are we having a table for 6? I thought it was just me." He's like, "No, Dave's coming." I'm like, "What?" So I like crapped on him his entire session. We've never met, and then I have to sit down and look at him for the next hour and a half. Um, and I just was so embarrassed. I was so like, and then I saw, and I think, and I've said this to Dave before. Probably one of the best things for me was to actually face the person that I was crapping on and have to sit there and look and see the implications of what I just done because he was destroyed. He was very upset about it. He never said anything about it, but I could tell he did not want to talk to me. And so obviously, we've mended things and, we're business partners now, but that was like a good thing for me. I don't know if it was a good thing for Dave, but it was good because like sometimes we talk tough and we say things because we don't actually have to face the person. And so
Right.
that was that really shifted a lot of things for me.
Yeah. Well, and we're teaching that, trying to teach that to our kids too,
Totally.
right? And so we've got to model the behavior we expect out of them, and but that's a powerful lesson. And I don't have exactly a
Yeah.
similar story to that, but I can definitely think of some of the best lessons I've learned have been when I've really screwed up.
Totally, totally. And I think it's good, because like I always, sometimes I see people doing stuff and I'm like, okay, before I get mad, did I ever do that? And kind of having this. And so you kind of talked about this a little bit, but I want to just kind of get a little bit deeper into this conversation. There are like a lot of negative stuff coming out from schools, a lot of teachers not happy with, and understandably so. And I'm not saying it's negated, but then it also kind of does it. I don't know if it sometimes gets us into a tougher situation. So where do you kind of find that balance of of like I'm actually going to read you this quote. This is actually from a book I'm reading right now, and I thought it was really powerful, and a lot of people appreciate it. But I'm like, this actually applies online and offline. It's from Will Guidara in Unreasonable Hospitality. It's a fantastic book. He says, criticize the behavior, not the person. Praise in public, criticize in private. Praise with emotion, criticize without emotion. And I love that. And
Mhm.
I think when we go to like crap on our own schools or our own school district, that to me is a last resort. And I don't know sometimes if it's being used as a first resort. And so, like, where do you kind of feel that balance where we want to ensure that people have their voices being heard, that we're making changes in the places that we work every day, but then also per- people saying, oh, we're ignoring that? Like, where do you kind of find that balance?
Well, social media is really meant to be social, like you said. If you
Right.
wanted to just put information out, you put it on your website. When you put things out on social media, you like literally want people to comment.
Yeah.
And so you have to have a little bit of foresight in regards to knowing and being able to identify things that might be trigger points
Yeah.
that may just end up, people having opinions on. So it's been definitely since March of 2020, we've had to get
What
careful.
happened then? What happened then?
What's that?
What
Oh, yeah,
happened in March? Did something happen in March of 2020?
yeah, the whole world, just seemed to
Oh,
change
right, right,
on
right, 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 right.
but yet we can still be positive. So I really talk about, your social media is for those celebrations and your direct
Mm,
communication, which there's a lot of ways you communicate directly. That's what you use that informational type stuff for. So if you don't really want opinions shared about it, then you shouldn't put it
right.
out there. I mean, we've got people all the time. We work with 85 school districts directly, my team and I,
Uh-huh.
where we're managing social media. George, actually, I manage social media for my school district still that I started with 9
Right,
years ago. So I'm in the trenches with you. So because I have to deal with those comments that come in, my lens is a little different than somebody who might just post something and, not
right,
even think about it. From, a shirt that might say, let's go, Brandon. And they, don't even think about that. And it's like, oh my gosh, we really can't put that on.
right,
Or,
right,
or a child that really looks unhappy in a picture. And it's like, oh, I, as a mom, wouldn't want my child pictured like that at school.
right,
So we have to have some of those lenses. It's not going to make those negative or those challenging comments possible because they
right.
are they're open. I think you've just got to have a plan. I really do talk about how to get ready, how to have a commenting guideline or a commenting policy so that that hey, you
Yeah.
can't say and attack a staff member and say something that's untrue or that threaten them in any way. I mean, there's ways that you can keep things safe, but you definitely do have to think about those things ahead of time. So does that help a little bit?
Totally. And when you're talking about this, we were really, I hear a lot of people saying, "Oh, these kids are so bad." Social media. I'm like, have you seen the adults? The adults are
Yes.
pretty bad. They're doing some nasty stuff, right? And we wanted to really help our kids, and one of the ways we did that was by helping the parent community. We did this thing in our schools where we had every kid had a blog, and we had what was called digital parent volunteers. And so the digital parent volunteers, they each week were assigned to comment to kids on their blogs. So they would write, and they actually, what was really powerful was the students actually, and this is kind of tying into what you were just saying, the students actually did tutorials for their families on how to properly comment online. And so like, hey, like make sure that you give comments that, provoke questions, start more conversation, but be thoughtful of what you're doing online because it is forever. And, people don't necessarily know your tone, necessarily do this. So we were, utilizing the students and their knowledge to kind of indicate because sometimes um, some of the bullying behavior that parents are upset about that's happening to their kids, they're doing it to adults, but they think, well, I'm like right, so I
Right.
can do it. But bullies often think they're right. That's kind of one of the issues. And so that was a really powerful thing is that we want our kids to really kind of write more, to do this too, also be aware of how they're doing online. But sometimes they were getting mixed signals from the adults on how they utilize it. So the adults are saying you need to be really thoughtful, be like how you connect, don't bully people. And then they were watching the adults do the exact opposite of what they're saying. And
Yeah.
that was a really good community thing for us. And I thought it was really powerful. I'm a big advocate. I really think social media can have a hugely positive impact, um, not only on the culture of our schools and the story that's being told, but I also believe it can really improve learning. And for me, to be honest with you, that is the most important element of what we do, because I don't want to spend my time doing something that does not improve the experience for our kids in the classrooms. Because you can have the best storytelling techniques, you can have all the incredible things that you're saying about your school, but if a kid comes home and says school sucks, I don't care about your Twitter account. So how do you see social media, how schools use it? How do you see it actually improving learning in the classroom?
Well, I think the biggest thing is engagement, and it's engagement with bringing what is happening in the schools home.
Yeah.
So family engagement, so a student to their parent and being able to have those conversations of what's happening, for this parent to get excited about, the learning opportunities and maybe asking questions. The other aspect, and I think this is a really powerful one, is just the teacher to teacher, interactions that are happening because I think, well, I've never been a teacher, George. So,
Yeah.
but it can be very isolating. I mean, you're in one classroom, you've got your group of kids that you're focused on, and sometimes it's hard to realize, hey, I'm part of this bigger story here. And
Mhm.
there's a lot of cool things happening, not only in my school but really around the world, right? Which is social media gives you that lens and gives you that ability to see, hey, what's possible? What are other second grade teachers doing with this type of lesson? Hey, maybe I can, see what they're doing and adapt it. And so
Like,
that's where I think it really takes learning to the next level. And kids get to be proud of what they're doing, George, and
yeah.
so do staff members. So does the bus driver. I mean, I'm telling you, if you want good engagement, you feature your bus driver, your
Mhm.
custodial staff, or your lunch crew.
Totally.
Those people do not get enough love, and that will instantly, create comments, and all of a sudden the parents are like, "Oh my gosh, my daughter wouldn't stop talking about, this experience or how this person came and helped them." That kind of engagement, those stories, those online interaction ends up causing offline interaction, and that's
Mhm.
really what we're after with this, and we can reach thousands of people. I mean, George, in my little school district in New Auburn,
Yeah.
where my girls go to school, by the way, I graduated from there back in 1996,
Awesome.
the best year. 32 kids in my class, so very small school, okay? But we're reaching on Facebook more than 5,000 people a week with our stories. We have 500 people in the whole town, but
Right.
we're 10xing that because we're using social media.
Mm.
And we're right next to schools that we have open enrollment in Wisconsin, which means you can go to whatever school you want to. You don't have to necessarily live in that district.
Right.
So it's competitive. So we're right next to two bigger schools that are only 7 minutes, 8 minutes on the other side. But let's showcase. I mean, I've got a daughter that's graduating in May, and she's going to have 24 college credits that
Yeah.
she hasn't had to pay for because our school is supporting some of that, the college career readiness and all of that. That's a huge advantage that we can really amplify because of social media.
Well, and you attract really great talent as well, right? Because people
Yeah.
see and they're like, "Hey, like I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of this too." And so people go to their way. When
Mhm.
I first became a vice principal, my one of my mentors at the time, Carolyn Cameron, she said to me, I'll never forget this. She said, "You'll become so much better of a teacher now that you're an administrator because you get the best PD possible. You get to see other teachers teach all the time." Right. And because she understood that I had a flexibility to be able to go into classrooms, see what was going on. So I was really excited about that. And then I realized I don't really need to be a better teacher because I'm not teaching anymore. So how do I leverage the ability to be flexible and see what's going on in the classroom and help my teachers grow? And so that's when I started, turning on my phone, started
Yeah.
highlighting what's happening because a lot of times the teacher across the hallway doesn't know what's going on in the other teacher's classroom because they don't have the benefit to go in there as much as they would like and to see this. And I think when we highlight, we're not waiting for the next staff meeting 6 weeks from now to highlight those practices. You can see it literally real time and kind of connect that. And I was actually talking about this recently. I was in Texas and there's a gentleman, he's probably about, pushing 80 years old, been in schools forever. And he said he's been studying innovation education from like the 60s. And he said in the 60s, one of the things that said what was actually going to have innovations stay within schools is if they were highlighted in their local media. And he said that was actually like a great indicator because if it was heard about, then people wanted to be part of that. And then it was replicated over and over again. So
Right.
he said to me, he goes, "Look, if I was still running a school, I'd be on this stuff all the time because what a great way to really kind of improve those incredible practices that are happening in your school and make them go viral. And that always, resonated with me and what he said. So I'm going to give you the last word here. This book is coming out very soon. What do you hope is like the big impact on, schools and our students?
I just want more stories told. There are amazing things happening. You and I both talked about, people get into schools and they forget all the incredible things that are happening each and every day because you're just in it all the time. But parents and your community don't get to see that. So I think that we have an incredible tool that's very powerful, but can be very scary. My book is just a guide to help schools really effectively and efficiently use it to celebrate the great things that are happening. And that's going to benefit kids. It's going to benefit staff. It's going to benefit parents and ultimately the community. So that's my hope with the book.
Yeah, and I love it. And I think we got to help the adults so they can help the kids too. So I think that's a really great thing. So Andrew, congratulations on the book. Everyone listening, I hope you check it out. It's actually in the link down below, Social Media for Schools. I know whether you are running an account or leading that in your school or teaching in the classroom, I'm sure this is applicable to everybody. So check it out. Andrew, thanks so much for your time. Everyone, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day.